Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about reimagining death. That is a thinker. So we will be thinking about it today with my special guest, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on to my show. I'm excited to think about this with you. So let's just dive right in. When you hear the words reimagining death, what does that necessarily make you think about?
It makes me think about the strides that we've taken to educate the public on alternative options. Um, yeah, that's where it comes initially because I feel like I've been in the changing realms of death care for the last 15 years, and it's like we're just finally getting consumers or the general public to actually reimagine the way we're doing death.
Look at that. So, what are the alternative ways to actually deal with that then?
So typically, the first thing people think of is burial or cremation. That can go a lot of different ways. But beyond burial and cremation, now you have conservation burial, traditional burial, green burial, composting, water cremation. And then beyond that, you could be a necklace, diamond, a record, a coral reef. I mean, there's so many things beyond just burial or cremation now.
Yes, that's true. I actually seen a video where this wife, her husband died, and she put his ashes in a gun barrel, like in a gun shell, and shot him. You know what I mean? And shot him out into the world. And that was just something kind of unique, you know. And then I seen another one where a woman put her grandmother in like a tree, like, and then it became a seed and it grew. And so I do think it's really interesting when people think about death, like you can do more than just sticking them in a coffin 6 feet under and then see them out at a cemetery whenever you feel the blues come in. So that is really interesting. I mean, for you, have you thought about like your own death and how you wanted to like be handled after?
Absolutely. My my years in death care have pretty much solidified my choice to just be wrapped in a blanket and put in a hole in a green burial cemetery covered in flowers. That's it.
Hmm. That is nice. It's sweet. It's
Yeah.
simple but sweet. I mean, why just in a blanket? Why not in a $10,000 coffin?
I mean, while I have friends in high places that could get me those caskets at a discount, the idea of returning back to the earth without something impeding me from doing that, I don't want to be like encapsulated in something. I want
Yeah.
to just become. I don't want to be in Tupperware.
Yeah, yeah. I don't blame you. I don't blame you because I was talking to my husband because his father just died recently and he was telling me how in Mexico they usually would just stick everybody in a hole. Like, you know what I mean? Like you will pay for like let's say five people because his dad paid for like a five-person burial, but and they didn't somebody died before he did, so they ended up putting their body in there so he couldn't die be put in there. But basically they just put your body like break it down, dismantle it, put it in a bag, and then throw you in the hole and then cover the hole up. Yeah.
Oh,
I
no.
was just like,
No.
that's intense. That's not something I would want to be a part of. And he's like, yeah, it was intense because when they went down to Mexico to visit a family member because he died, they were taking out like bags of like old ones, like his younger brother that died years ago. They took it out and his limb was popping out, and I was just like, oh my God, that's traumatic. Like that is something that I would not want to participate in. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to go there to see all that, but it's intense,
Yeah.
like I've even seen culturally in other countries, like in Southeast Asia, where they actually allow like the dead body to still be like unwrapped and exposed to the air and just like exposed to the families, and they treat them like if they're still there. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do you think in those type of aspects with those type of cremate those type of like managing,
Disposition.
dealing with death in those ways?
Um, what I learned throughout my career in death care is that everybody is going to do things that may be different to me or someone else, but if it brings them comfort, as long as it's legal and ethical, I don't care. I mean, as long as it's legal and ethical, I can't, it's not my place to step in and say different. Personally, I don't think I would want to share a grave with someone. I know that in the United States, they do that kind of in New Orleans, is the most, based on what we do typically in the United States, New Orleans is the most out there with the sharing of the graves. Sounds very familiar to what they're doing in Mexico too.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah. I don't,
Yeah.
I just want to be buried and left alone. That's why I can't get on board with composting necessarily, because they put you in a warehouse for a few months and churn you and mulch you up, and then you have to go somewhere else. It's like, I just want to be laid to rest and left
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, be at peace. You know what I mean? Exactly.
But
I
to
think
each
that's
their own.
right, right. To each his own. I'm not here to judge you. If you want a sky burial,
Yeah.
go ahead. Let the birds eat you. I'm not mad at you, you know what I mean? That's what brings you peace. Go ahead. But it's like, I
Yeah.
guess my next question is, what made you go into, you know what I mean, this realm to be a mortician and you know what I mean, to deal with death on all the time, you know what I mean? Like how did you discover this joy of dealing with this? Or is it even joyful?
There are times where it can be joyful, but there's a lot of times where it's not. The joy comes in helping people get from point A to point B,
Yeah.
especially during the grieving process because it's just so tumultuous. Um, what initially got me into death care was kind of a joke. It was the summer before my senior year in high school. We were watching the news. They were interviewing local family owned businesses, and one of them was a funeral home. And the lady that was talking, was explaining they wanted somebody for the summer. And my mom piped up from the kitchen, "Oh, you should go work at the funeral home." And I said, "I will." And I got the job because the lady knew my grandfather. And that completely opened the door to end of life care for me. Taking somebody that was sick and frail and making them look like they could get up and walk out of the room was an art to me. But the longer I was in it, the more questions I had, and I began to discover the questions I was asking weren't necessarily ones they wanted to answer. Like, why are we putting people in vaults, in the cemetery when this side of the cemetery, 20, 50 years ago didn't have this? So, yeah,
I mean,
educating
those
myself on the alternatives and then becoming somebody that could be relied on for that, that brings me joy.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think those are valid points. I mean, I would ask those questions too, because it is interesting because, oh my goodness, sometimes just the way that people I mean, I think that just the grieving process is the hardest to see. I don't think I could be able to do your job because I'm very empathic, so it's like I can feel people's emotions and it jumps on me right away. Like one time I was with an old boyfriend at the time and his grandfather died and he wanted me to come with him to the funeral service and I was like, sure, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Well, he was bawling his eyes out, like he couldn't handle it. And then because I felt his emotions, I started crying. And the people were like, "How did you know him?" And I was like, "Technically, I didn't, but I'm just sad because he's sad, and it's very heavy. Like, oh my goodness, the heaviness that he held on to was just a lot. Like, so."
Yeah.
I know that you are now transitioning with helping, you know, like pet owners manage the death with their pets. I mean, how is that for you? Like how did you transition that? Because that's totally reimagining death in a whole new way with animals because we don't really think about that either.
Yeah, it seemed like the next logical step to educate the consumers and the people. I hate calling people that have to buy death services consumers, but that seems to be the word everybody understands. So, clients, just general public in general, they have more deaths in their lifetime that are pets than they do humans.
Yeah.
So, by getting to them at the pet stage, you're able to educate them on what is possible at the human stage. What I noticed where I started implementing this was back in Austin, Texas. A water cremation facility for pets opened. And again, that was a very new concept, especially for Texas, where water cremation isn't yet legalized for humans. So, by engaging the community and educating them on the water cremation, like at farmers markets or different animal pop ups, places like that, they were getting that experience. And then, well, why can't we get this for our humans? Well, the water cremation lady would be like, let me have you talk to Melissa, and this is how you get it for humans. So that eventually evolved into when I was in Washington, I was like, I want to open up like a mobile pet funeral home where I go to the people and I can take their pet to the crematory, and be that liaison instead of just having to deal with the vet's office. So again, hands-on, seeing how people were being educated through the care of their pet, keeping their pet at home even after euthanasia for a few hours for the other pets to say goodbye or friends and family to come by. Just little suggestions like that that open people's minds to the whole possibilities of being able to do these with our human dead.
What is exactly water cremation? Like, I understand regular cremation, but what is necessarily water cremation?
Yeah, water cremation's been around for over 20 years, but mostly in the medical community, like for donor bodies and things like that, because it's scientifically and just mechanically better than flame cremation. So, flame cremation, obviously, the body is placed into a retort and then burned to ash, which is actually just bone. It's bone fragments. It's not ash, it's bone. And it's ground up and it's given to you in an urn. With water cremation, the body is placed into the stainless steel vessel, and then 95% water is added, and then a 5% solution of sodium hydroxide, potassium, the alkaline mix is added. I like to tell people, I give you the scare. It's somewhere between what you've seen in Breaking Bad and then somewhere between that and a spa day for your body. So, like when you were younger and you sat in the bathtub a long time and your fingers got really wrinkly, just imagine that that keeps on going. And when the body, you're what, 80% moisture anyway, they tell us somewhere between 80 and 90% moisture, you are returning to liquid. The in this liquid, it's not like chunky soup. I want people to understand, don't let your mind go crazy. It looks like iced tea without the ice. So you have the swirling elements, and you'd be like, what are these shimmery things? The amino acids, the peptides, the salts, the fats, all the parts of you that plant life love. So actually, the liquid portion of you, the effluent, can be used to fertilize meadows, flowers, different things like that, trees. And then the bone part of you comes out of the machine. It's dried, and then you could touch it like this, and it'll just break into a powder form because at that point, it is its most basic element, which is carbon phosphate. So you're reduced to carbon phosphate, which is pH neutral. And that talks about the whole tree thing. People think, oh, I can go scatter ashes and that's going to flame cremation remains are pH negative and can actually burn plant life. So, like, if you scatter it on top of a grave and you go later, it looks like concrete's been laid out, like scattered there. With water cremated remains, it's not like that. You can sprinkle it around and it won't kill the plant life. So,
Wow, well, look at you teaching me something.
a
That
wealth
is
of
truly
information that you may or may
amazing.
not want.
Hey, it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, it's good information either way because that's something I really didn't know. And I just seen a video where some girl was taking her dad all across Europe and was scattering his ashes all over the place. And now I'm realizing, like, you know what? She's just burned down all those plants and all those little places in Europe because they're not pH, it's pH negative. Like, oh my goodness. Now, if I see little dead spots, now I'm gonna wonder if it's like, did somebody put ashes there? You know what I mean? Like the questions, the thoughts, like that's interesting.
You go out to an older cemetery, it doesn't happen at the more contemporary cemeteries that are all maintenance because they got people driving around all the time to make sure that's not happening. You go to an older cemetery, and in front of a grave, you might see what looks like a little gray pile that's hard. Those are cremated remains. So they don't merge with the earth. And by telling people this, I have gotten some kickback. Like some lady was like, well, I went and spread my son at the place that he always liked to sit, and I don't care that it did that. That's fine. I understand everybody's going to have their reasoning, but I want you to know if you decide to do this in your backyard and you plant mom with a rose bush, you're killing the rose bush. Period. End of story. You have to have a healthy mixture of good soil with this pH negative to actually make something happen.
Yeah, I mean that makes
TMI for some
sense.
people.
Yeah, no, I like that. I appreciate that. Goodness gracious, you really learn when you actually sit down and think and hear somebody out, because you hear the both ends of the spectrum. I mean, the water cremation, I mean, that does sound interesting as well because make it you made like it's iced tea, you know what I mean? So visually I'm
Yeah.
I'm seeing what you're saying and I'm just like, "Huh, that is truly interesting," because we wouldn't think about us breaking down in that manner. But if you really
Yeah.
do think about it, that is interesting. I mean, how long does that process usually take to
So
break down
water
to that point?
cremation takes about 6 hours to do.
Oh, okay.
And that's including the drying of the bones and everything. But what it
Oh,
mimics is natural decomposition in the ground, just sped up.
oh. Well, goodness, you're gonna make me really want to look into this now because that
Yeah.
seems like a better option.
Well, here's the catch with water cremation. It's only legal in certain states because in other states, we'll use Texas, for example.
Yeah,
I started a water cremation business in Austin, Texas, when water cremation wasn't yet legal in Texas. So, how were we able to do it?
yeah.
We flew the bodies to a facility in St. Louis, Missouri, with a
Mm.
box of Texas soil to put under the machine. So, technically, they were being water cremated over Texas soil, but in a legal state. And some people would say, well, that's carbon that you're putting out by sending the body to another state. It's a carbon neutral trip because the plane was already going to go there. That deceased individual is just catching a ride.
Oh, yeah, I see,
So,
I see what you're saying. My husband's from Texas, he's from Houston, so it's a real thing about, you know what I mean, Texans and their heart to that soil and to that land right there. I don't know what it
yeah,
is. Any other states, like, it's whatever. I'm part of the state. I live in the state, but no, no, not a Texas, not a
yeah,
Texan. They go hard for their state. So yes. Oh my goodness, that is truly interesting. So is there a wrong way to deal with death in your eyes?
ignoring it. One thing I have seen over my career is that there are a lot of people that are hands off, don't want to talk about it, don't want to touch it, don't want to see their loved one. But then you have the families that are involved, maybe doing a home vigil, or they're coming and bathing their loved one or dressing them or having some kind of participation in the burial. Their grieving process and healing process, they move along the ladder a whole lot faster than people that are just like,
It never happened.
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because the denial portion of it just can really take a toll on you. You can't act like the person's just at work for the rest of their days. You know what I mean? You can't act like they're
totally.
on vacation. Like you have to actually acknowledge the fact that they are no longer among us. You know what I mean? They are no longer with us. And I think that is just the hardest part for people. And I think just talking about death is just a taboo in itself, you know what I mean? Nobody wants to talk about it because they think they're gonna bring it on to themselves or to their loved ones, but it's like we really have to prepare because at the end of the day, we're all due for it, you know what I mean? One way or another, we're all gonna cross that road, and it's like, how are we really going to start thinking about our death in another way or our pet's death? Oh my goodness, my pet died. Oh my goodness, and in August of last year, and it was so hard for me because the day I seen him, like it was like normal, and then the next night, like that same night, like I give him a kiss. I'm like, okay, good night. And then my husband was like, something's up with him, like something seems weird, as if he's saying goodbye in a way because he just like looked out into us. Like I didn't allow him in our room because I don't like my dog sleeping on my bed or anything like that. So like he was just like sat there looking, and then like he went to his bed, and then in the next morning when I woke up to wake him up for his normal morning walk, like he didn't wake up. He was just laying there like asleep. And I was just like, no. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was in denial. Like I was like, I went through the stages and everything, but then like it was real to me, like, yeah, he's not with us. And it's still in my throat. But yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing that you helping people. I mean, you started that business with pets and just giving them that understanding because man, just with pet owners, that process it makes it really real for us. You know what I mean? Really real for us. And time is truly catching up to us. And I feel like we can dive into death in different manners, in different ways, especially with your expertise and your knowledge for 15 years. Goodness gracious, I could only imagine the things that you've seen and heard and saw. But yeah, I know. But what give me some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Um, again, the great Gail Rubin said, talking about babies won't make you pregnant, but in talking about death won't make you dead, or something like that.
I like that.
Uh, and I think we're doing ourselves and our loved ones a favor when we have these discussions, because what I'm seeing as marketing has entered the funeral industry full force. Like, I want you to think about this. How many people have like heard about the human composting lately? Because, okay, you may not have, but it has gotten so much more press than the water cremation.
Hmm.
But if you look at the two options, the human composting and the water cremation, the human composting is outsourcing materials from other states to bring them in, putting them in a warehouse to break down the body and turn it into soil, right? So all of that uses energy, whereas the water is just a small, like, blip in the space of this 3 months that it would take for human composting. People aren't aware of that because all the press that human composting gets isn't going to talk about the alternatives. They're only going to talk about human composting. So, for example, you Google green burial these days, and you might have a composting place in another state be the first thing that shows up on Google. If you're not already educated in this, you might think, oh, this is a cool option, become soil. When in reality, you could be wrapped in your grandmother's blanket or something that you made or something that's personal to your family and buried in ground that you're protecting from ever being torn up, because it's a sacred space. Once you bury a human, you can't tear that ground up. You've seen highways go around graveyards before. um, if you're going by just what the media, social media, publications tell you about the options, you're only going to get the good bits. It's best if people actually do the research before they're faced with the death, because not only is it going to help your healing, it's also going to help you feel like you had control over the situation and there's not a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas afterwards.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, that's
big
true.
ask.
Yeah, it is. And it's a hard time to really process everything. So it's like to imagine it and to think of it in advance is the best way so that when it's your time to pass, the family members aren't freaking out, scrambling and running in circles trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. It'll all be situated, it'll all be handled, and it'll just be an easier process to deal with. So yeah, I think like you said earlier, just because you talk about babies don't make you have a baby, you know what I mean? And just because you talk about that doesn't mean the death angel is going to be knocking at your door like, okay, I'm ready for you. Like, it doesn't work like that. So, yeah, I think those are very valid points. And I wish more people will really think about this. And, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this conversation, because how could you not? You know what I mean? How could you not? Please go check out Melissa. I have her website on this and in the description in the audio if you're listening in audio, or if you're on YouTube in the description as well, or if you're on my website, go find her photo, just boop, click right on it, and it goes directly to hers, so you can find all the great content that she has to offer the world, so that obviously you can continue on thinking. So with that being said, bye.